Shalom, shalom. First thing and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory and honor that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect. Lord's in his gospel, broad lifting up the standard of Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, wherever it may be. This is just a little quick little lesson through the Spirit. I had the privilege of reading. I'm actually reading through this book by author Koestler called The 13th Tribe, which this book exposes the small hats to the T. And they break down the fact in great detail on who the people you call the Israelis, or the JESS, which we call them the JOOs, or the small hats, or the Khazars, or whatever you want to call them, the 1948ers. And this basically exposes them on how they're actually not the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob, but they are of Abraham and Isaac, which this book slightly went off because they tried to turn these people to the Japhetic peoples in some degree, because they basically stated that they're not of Shemitic origin. In fact, they are of Shemitic origin, because we know that Edom is the twin brother of Jacob, which come out of the loins of Isaac, right? Which is Yahweh Shai in reincarnation. Now, this is how they try to hide it, because this is Esau trying to hide himself, as it tells us in the book of Genesis that Cain would be a fugitive and a vagabond. And the best thing, or if you think of a criminal or a person that's on the run, and they on wanted posters all over the city or wherever it may be, you think of a disguise, right? Which they have a term called hiding in plain sight. So basically, Edom is disguising himself as other nations to avoid his penalty of punishment. And this is why a lot of times these rabbis and these scholars and these historians and these researchers come out and they will expose themselves, but overall they still leave a question mark there, because clearly these people are not the Israelites, but they're not Japhetic peoples either. But in fact, they're Edomites, okay? So if you do the history on this guy, Arthur Koestler, I believe they took him out, because this book, it has a lot of history in it, man, regarding who the people that inhabited the land of Israel through the Balfour Declaration, through political means, are assuming our identity. All right. So when you read the title, it says the startling new discovery about the true ancestry of the Jewish people, it will cause a stir. All right. Now, when you go to the back of it, it says this book traces the history from the ancient Khazars Empire, a major but almost forgotten power in Eastern Europe. It says, which in dark ages became converted to Judaism. And this is why we tell you that they converted over in the 6th century. Okay, because when you go into the whole concept of the Sephardic Jews, and you had not the Orthodox, you had Sephardic Jews, and then you had the Khazars, which they were both Edomites. But basically, they converted over to this around the 6th to the 8th century, which they say the 6th, 7th, or 8th centuries. But here it says Khazaria was finally wiped out by the forces of Genghis Khan. It says, but evidence indicates that the Khazars themselves migrated to Poland and formed the cradle of Western Jewry. Okay, like that guy B.B. Mikowski, I believe he comes out of the tents of the Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, which a lot of people from Poland and a lot of people from Germany migrated to the Ukraine, then, back to the parts of the Middle East, and then parts to Israel, and in different parts of the world. All right. But it says, to the general readers, the Khazars who flourished from the 7th to 11th century may seem effeminate remote today, but yet they have a close and unexpected bearing to our world, which emerges as Mr. Koestler recounts the fascinating history of the ancient Khazar Empire, a major but almost forgotten power in Eastern Europe at about the time that Charlemagne was emperor in the West. All right, it says the Khazars sway extended from the Black Sea to the Caspian, from the Caucasus to Volga, which, the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia and Russia, okay, that sit between the Black and the Caspian Sea, and we got a little history on that too. But it says here, to Volga, and they were instrumental in stopping the Muslim onslaught in Byzantium, which basically was the Moors, okay, because the Byzantine Empire was really ran by Jakes. But it says the eastern jaw of the gigantic pincer or pincer movement that the West swept across northern Africa and Spain. It says thereafter the Khazars found themselves in a precautious position between two major world powers, the Eastern Roman Empire and Byzantium, and the triumphant followers of Muhammad, which Byzantium really deals with those Jakes, man, our people. All right, so here I was reading on page 14, and it really gets gritty because, matter of fact, it goes into the what it says here. Oh, that's not what I want, because it went into Emperor Leo the Fourth. But pages 14 and 15 really puts a light on who these people really are. Okay, and like I said, this is why I believe that they killed this dude, Arthur Koestler. Even the Apostle Gabar brought that out. But it says a few years later, probably 740 AD 740, it says here, the king, his courts, and the military ruling class embraced the Jewish faith. Okay, but when you go back here, it goes into the whole concept of the war between the Arabs and Khazaria, right? But here it picks up and says the Jewish faith and Judaism became the state religions of the Khazars. It says, no doubt their contemporaries were astonished by this decision, as modern scholars were when they came across the evidence of the Arab, Byzantine, Russian, and Hebrew sources. It says one of the most recent comments is to be found in a work by the Hungarian Marxist historian Dr. Anto Bartha. His books on the Magyar society in the English and 9th centuries has several chapters on Khazars, as during the most of that period the Hungarians were ruled by them, yet their conversion to Judaism is discussed in a single paragraph with obvious embarrassment. It reads, all right, now when you look up, and I did some research, and I looked up who were the Hungarians, right? And here, it's on my other phone. Give me a second. Still learning how to use this other Android. Well, this Android, I've been using this iPhone for some time. But I looked up, I says, are the Magyars white people? And then it reads, it says, Hungary is located in Eastern Europe. Okay, and they mention Eastern Europe. It says ethnic Hungarians call themselves Magyars and account for 84% of the total Hungarian population of 9.98 million. It says their language belongs to the language family of Uralic, and their race is white. Okay, so-called white people, man. Yep, it says Hungarians are the Uralic people. Some subgroups have ancestry from the Cumans, Huns, and Scythians, and they are a pure steppe people, which were Edomites. Yep, see? Hungarian 84.3%, Romanian 2.1%, German 1%, other 1.2%. They have an unspecified 13.7%, but all in part, majority of them are Edomites, if that make any sense. So it says here, our investigations cannot go into problems pertaining to the history of ideas, but we must call the reader's attention to the matter of the Khazar kingdom's state religion. It says it was the Jewish faith which became the official religion of the ruling strata of society, right? Because, see, they knew our history, okay? And the thing of it is, we fell away from our heritage, because, remember, after the Romans besieged Jerusalem in 70 AD, or 67 AD, remember, we was dispersed into all over Europe, and Jakes went down to Africa, and then, you had Native Americans later on down the line that migrated here migrated to the Americas. To be honest with you, had Gad already over here and Reuben over here. But you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi and some forms of the northern kingdom that migrated to parts of Europe. Okay, would it be Spain, Germany, Asia, which technically Jerusalem is in Asia. Okay, it's no such thing as the Middle East. But you had Jakes that went down into the Jeddas of Africa, north to Gibraltar, to Europe, to Ireland, England, and so forth. But it says it was the Jewish faith which became the official religion of the ruling strata of society. But needless to say, the acceptance of the Jewish faith as the state religion of ethnically non-Jewish people, could be of the subject of interesting speculations. It says, we should, however, confine ourselves to the remark that this official conversion in defiance of Christian proselytizing by Byzantium, and those were actual Israelites, okay, because you had what they call the Holy Roman Empire, which was ruled by Jakes, going back to 324 AD, which is by this guy by the name of Constantine the Great, okay, which was an Israelite. It says, proselytizing by Byzantium, the Muslim influence from the East, and in spite of political pressure of these two powers, to a religion which had no support from any political power. So really, it wasn't really accepted, because they're like, wait a minute, this seems kind of unfamiliar. You're not a ethnically Israelite people, so it was kind of strange, right? But it reads, it says, which had no support from any political power, but was persecuted by nearly all, and has become a surprise to all historians concerned with the Khazars, and cannot be considered as accidental, but must be regarded as a sign of independent policy pursued by that kingdom. So they took it upon themselves to call themselves Jews, or JOOs. It says, which leaves us only slightly more bewildered than before. But yet, whereas the source differs in minor detail, the major facts are beyond this dispute. But what is in dispute is the fate of the Jewish Khazars after the destruction of their empire in the 12th or 13th century. But on this problem, the sources are scant, but various late medieval Khazar settlements are mentioned in Crimea, in the Ukraine, where B.B. Malkowski come from, who you know as what's this guy's name? Netanyahu, you know who, in Hungary, okay, Poland and Lithuania. But the general picture is that emerges from the fragmented pieces of information that is, and bear with me, it's kind of hard reading on this little screen. It says, of the migration of the Khazar tribes and communities into regions of Eastern Europe, mainly Russia and Poland, okay? So going back to who the Hungarians are, I'm going to read it again. And it says here, Hungary is located in Eastern Europe. Ethnic Hungarians call themselves Magyars or Magars and account for 84% of the total Hungarian population of 9.98 million. It says their language belongs to the language of the family of Uralic, and their race is white, which white is really a social construct. They were actually red people. Okay, they were Edomites. They still are. But it says here, Europe, mainly Russia and Poland, where at the dawn of the modern age and greatest concentrations of you-know-whos were found. It says this has led several historians to conjecture that a substantial part and perhaps the majority of Eastern Jews, and hence the world of Jewry, may be of Khazar and not of Semitic origin, okay? And that's the cut, but see, they go off because in actuality, the small hats are actually of Semitic origin because they are of the loins of Shem, okay? Which you go into the word Shem, it means name, Sham, which means name. The chosen line comes forth Shem, Abraham, Isaac, then Jacob. But the promises were not given to Esau. Okay, so for all these guys out there that's talking about, yeah, the Israelis or those are the real true children of Israel, well, this book begs to differ. Okay, and so is Bible prophecy, which totally defy those odds, man. And this is why this guy is probably not alive to this day, because this is some very vital information. And if you took this book, or a very small hat read this book, they would consider the fact of who they really are. But they will, they would just totally, they would write it off because, like the scriptures say, they are like the deaf adder that stop at our ear. So you can bring out all this historical fact and all this information, but they would never subjugate themselves to it because they've been deceived and they've been led to believe a well-generated lie. And now there's a sense of pride and entitlement on a stolen heritage, which really belongs to us. But it says the far-reaching implication of this hypothesis may explain the great caution exercised by historians in approaching this subject if they do not avoid it altogether, because they don't want to expose this information, but it's out here. All right, but it says, thus, in the 1973 edition of the Encyclopedia Judaica, or Judacia, Salakia, the article Khazars is signed by Dunlop, but there is a separate section in dealing with Khazar you-know-whos after the fall in the kingdom, signed by the editors and written with the obvious intent to avoid upsetting believers in the dogma of the chosen race. Okay. So that's a cut to who they are, man. Because when you read this or when you bring out this information, they say, oh, you're anti-S, you're anti-S. But wait a minute, man. How can we be anti-S when clearly we come out of the lines of Shem? Okay, but see, this is what they say. They try to say, well, you know, so-called Negroes are of Hamitic descent, but that's not true. Okay, because they teach that Ham was cursed with dark skin because of his sin to his father. I believe he looked upon Noah's nakedness, you know, but that wasn't the curse of Ham, all right? Him having all the nations had a hue of dark skin at that time, or a darker skin, or people of color, I may add, all right? But it says here, the Turkish-speaking Karaites, a fundamentalist Jewish sect of Crimea, Poland, and elsewhere, have affirmed a connection with the Khazars. See, so the people of Poland, Crimea, Russia, a lot of those are Khazars, man. Okay, which are Edomites. It says, which are perhaps confirmed by evidence from folklore and anthropology as well as the language. But there seems to be a considerable amount of evidence attesting to the continued presence in Europe of descendants of Khazars. But however, it is important in quantitative terms is that presence of the Caucasian sons of Japhet, and this is where they go off. Caucasian sons of Japhet in the tense of Shem. But that's where they go off at, because for one thing, Japhet is not Caucasian. See, they look at that fact about what is it? Meshach and Tubal, okay, in the land of Gog, which were actually ancient Japhetic languages. I mean, Japhetic lands. Even the old Greeks, the Romans, those were actually Japhetic peoples. But see what Esau did, and this is why you have to understand prophecy. Esau, Edom took over those lands and assumed the identity of those peoples. So this is why people think that Japhet are Edomites or so-called white people. But if you understand end-time prophecy, Japhet does not play a pivotal role in end-time prophecy, but Esau does. Okay, so they go off here. That's why it says, how important in quantitative terms is the presence of the Caucasian sons of Japhet? See, he put that in there because he can't say that they're Edomites, because this will just blow the whole thing up. But for him to have all this information throughout all this research, and he had to be tied to some type of global elite structure to be able to even come up with this information, I'm pretty sure he came across the fact that so-called white people are Edomites. He had to. There's no way in hell that you have all this information on who these people are, but yet you seem to not trace them back to the nation of Edom. Because if these are Japhites, then where the hell is Esau at then? All right, he's alive and well, very well. Like Donald Trump is not a Japhite, he's an Edomite, man. And anybody that knew that Trump was Nero in a reincarnation know that the Romans were actually Edomites. And I have a book as well titled The Romans, the Empire of the Edomites. Okay, and everybody know that the descendants of the Romans today are so-called white people today. You know what I'm saying? Even though you had Jakes in Rome, because Rome, you know, just like a Roman citizenship, just like an American citizenship, you got Jakes that are Americans, but overall, the hierarchy of that time of the Roman Empire were Edomites, man. You had some Jakes in there too, all right, to not get it confused, but you get the point. Like the 12 Caesars, they were Edomites, man, which would call themselves Romans. But it reads, it says, one of the most racial or radical propounders of hypotheses concerning the Khazar's origins of Jewry and a professor of medieval Jewish history at Tel Aviv University, A.M. Polak, but his books, Khazaria in Hebrew, was published in 1944, Tel Aviv, and a second edition in 1951. And in his introduction, he writes that the facts demand a new approach both to the problem of the relations between the Khazar Jewry and other Jewish communities, and to the question of how far we can go regarding this Khazar Jewry as the nucleus of the large Jewish settlement in Eastern Europe. And we know that they didn't migrate from Eastern Europe. We came from Israel, and we were pushed into all those lands. Okay, but these people, not so. But it reads, it says, the descendants of this settlement, those who stayed where they are, those who emigrated to the United States and other countries, and those who went to Israel, constitute now the large majority of the world Jewry, which he's comparing them to Khazars, or the Sephardic Jews, as they like to call them. Well, those are two different sects, but still, you get the point. And also, which proved that these ain't the Israelites, because for one thing, most of us got scattered out of the land when the Lord said that he roughly paraphrasing it, it's in Baruch. He said that we grieved Jerusalem, which nursed us, so therefore the Lord kicked us out of our land, and he sold us into our enemies, man, because we were worshiping idols. So these people came in and they basically stole the identity and assumed us. All right. But it says here, this was written before the full extent of the you know what was known, but that does not alter the fact that the large majority of surviving JEWs in the world of Eastern European and thus perhaps mainly Khazar origin. But it says, but if so, this would mean that the ancestors came not from Jordan, but from the Volga, and from the Canaan, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus. Okay. One's believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race, which we know the Aryans are Edomites, and genetically they are more closely related to Hun, Ugar, and Magar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which that's not true, because even among the Huns and the Magars and the Hungarians, they come out of the tents of Abraham and Isaac as well, because those are Edomites, man, which Esau was the son of Isaac. So they're still Hebrews as well. They're just not Israelites. And this is where they bring in the confusion. Okay, but it says, should this turn out to be the case, then the term anti-S will become void of meaning based on the misapprehension shared by both the killers and their victims. But the story of the Khazar Empire as it slowly emerges from the past begins to look like the most cruel hoax which history has ever perpetuated, man. Okay, or perpetrated. So they basically telling on themselves, man. All right. And Salaki, I was all over the place, kind of trying to get the little history in, you know, and just breaking it down. Sometimes it's a lot of information to kind of swoop back and forth. So Salaki, if it was a little choppy. But like I said, I've been reading this book, and it's, man, you learn a lot, you know, this is history we've already learned in the past, but just refamiliarizing ourselves on this history is always a good thing. So I wanted to look this up too before I shut it down. I looked up, shit, where'd it go? Yep. And I looked up the Caucasus Mountains, right? And it gave you, as we know, that Esau dwelled in the clefts of the rocks. Okay, you had what they call Mount Seir, which Mount Seir and the Caucasus Mountains are not the same thing, all right? You also had something called Petra, which is south of Jordan as well, all right? But this is the Caucasus Mountains, and this is where Esau was pushed forth, all right? Because it says here, the Caucasus Mountains is a mountain range at the intersection of Asia and Europe, stretching between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It says here, they are surrounded by the Caucasus region and are home to Mount Erebus, the highest peak in Europe at 5,642 meters, which is 18,510 feet above sea level. And this got to be talking about Esau, because when you go to like downtown Chicago or just like any downtown city, they build their skyscrapers extra high because it's a remnant of them being in those mountains, man. Okay, like everything around you, 90% of this place or 90% of the cities are fucking concrete. Okay, outside of the country areas. But when you go into these cities, it's nothing but concrete. This is why they call them concrete jungles, man. You know, you go downtown, you got sidewalk, you got streets. Even the buildings are made of concrete to some degree. Steel beams and concrete, you know. So, yeah, man, without a reasonable doubt, this proves that those Khazars and even those, what they call Sephardic JWOs are, you know, even of Ottoman Turk, a lot of those are Edomites, man. Okay, that's pretty much in mating with those Ishmaelites, because remember, the sons of Esau married up into the daughters of Ishmael too. So there you go, the Ottoman Turks. All right, but anyway, I got a precept real quick. Let me go from here. This is the book of Obadiah 1, and I'm gonna start at verses. Yep, let's start at Obadiah 1, and I'm gonna start at verses 3. It says, the pride of thy heart have deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. Right, because they lived up in the mountains, man, in them caves. And this is why they go skydiving, parachuting. Esau will climb a 10,000-foot mountain because that's in his nature to do so. Okay, this is why Esau, Edom, he builds skyscrapers. This is just, and there's just several context clues as to who these people are. But if you got a guy like Vocab, he'll straight up tell you that all the Edomites are done away with, and if they're not, then they can get salvation as well. But that's not biblical. It says, whose habitation is high, that said in his heart, who should bring me down to the ground? Okay, So that's the pride of this devil. It says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and that's another sign right there, the eagle, because if you look at the emblem of the Romans, even the Americans or the modern day Babylonians, the Americans, what is they sign? The eagle, okay, because that's the highest flying bird. Even when Donald Trump, when he took his picture for Time magazine, he had an actual eagle he was posing with, man. Okay, and this is why they called him Eagle Face Trump. But he was posing for the Time magazine, and he had a real eagle on his arm. You know, that was a real eagle in the picture with him. And it's the funny part, he actually looked like one. But it says, though exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence would I bring thee down, says the Lord, okay? Which proves that you devils, man, you ain't going nowhere. You're still the same people today. You know? This is the book of Job 30. And we're going to start at verses... Let's start at verses 3. It says, matter of fact, let's start at 3. It says, for the want and famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former times desolate and waste, who cut up marrows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men, and they cried after them as a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Okay, so right there. And when you go into the Hungarians peoples, and you go into the Magyars and so forth, and the Caucasus, hey, these were Edomites, man, if that make any sense. And it says that among the bushes they brayed, and under the nettles they were gathered together. All right, go over here to the book of Ezekiel 36, which proves that those people in the land are really not, they're not the people of the Most High. Okay, we don't give a damn how much you want to refute it and argue about it. At the end of the day, those ain't the Lord's people. Okay, matter of fact, let's start, I think it's at verse 14. Let me see, 34, Israel to be renewed by his name's sake. Okay, hold on, Slaki, give me a second. I know I'm overpassing it. Ezekiel 36, the land. Therefore, thou shalt devour. I'm trying to find it real quick. I know it's in this chapter that he was going to give our land into the Gentiles, going to possess our land. You can read about that in Matthew 24 as well. Fuck. Let's just start at verses 1. It says, also, thou son of man, prophesy into the mountains of Israel, and say, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus says the Lord Yahweh, because the enemy have said against you, aha, even the ancient places, and it says, are ours and possession. Therefore prophecy and say, thus says the Lord Yahweh, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that ye may be a possession unto residue of the heathen, and ye are taken up in the lips of talkers, and are the infamy of the people. Therefore, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahweh thy power, which said unto the Lord Yahweh, to the mountains of Israel, and to the rivers, and to the valleys, and to the desolate wastes, and to the cities that are forsaken, which become a prey and derision to the residue of heathen that are round about, right? Okay, because the heathen took our land. When we start going off, the Lord kicked us out of the land. And this goes into it. But it says, therefore, thus says Yahweh, surely in the fire of my jealousy I have spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, okay? Idumea, which is Esau, which have appointed my land into their possession. When did the Edomites take over Jerusalem? Okay, you got the time of the Romans, because actually Israel, or the land of Judea, was a tributary into the Roman province, so we did pay tribute to them, but our people were still living in the land at that time, with the northern kingdom already being casted off, with some remnants in Jerusalem. But in this present time, Idumea, which is the Edomites, they have complete control of that land, and this is why BB is trying to do an ethnic cleansing of those Palestinians over there, or Palestinians. Okay, Hamas, which are proxies of Iran, Hezbollah. Okay, he's trying to uproot that land because he wants to make an ethnic cleansing. But it says here, against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possessions, with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds, to cast it out for a prey. Okay, so that's the point I wanted to make regarding these, Esau. That this book, the 13th tribe, Very, very good book, man. I encourage brothers to read it and pick it up, as myself is going back through this history and just refamiliarizing myself with this thing. So Lord's will, I'll come back and do, follow up on this, because this is a good book. And I know I was kind of all over the place with points and kind of stumbling over some words, but it's kind of hard to read it and hold the camera and man things at the same time. So Salakia, but Lord's will, you will edify to the next lesson. Shalom.